It is now time. Thanks.
Now,
Yeah. All right. We're going to call this meeting to order. And with that, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are fortunate to be gathering together on the unceded territory of the Secwepemc, who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial and give us a beautiful place that we can call home and raise our community. So with that, thanks. Do we have any introduction of late items?
No acting there.
No. Great. Recommendation that the agenda for the October 27th special council meeting to be approved as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All in favor? That's great. Thank you very much. We're going to look to the minutes of the regular council meeting held October the 18th. There's a recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting held October 18th be adopted. I'm looking to this side of the table. Councillor Taylor. Motions seconded by Councillor Herring. Any discussion on those? Terrific. All in favor? Motion carried. We're going to move to the committee of the whole, and the recommendation is that the council enter a meeting of committee of the whole. So moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Great. The item of the day is, it feels a bit like a reality TV show. We get to pick up where we left off, which I believe was page 14 of the.
you thought it was 12.
Oh, you know me, moving ahead. For the Clearwater Council Procedure Bylaw and number 268. So.
Did we finish 12?
Okay, so on this, I wasn't quite sure by the email, and I don't. Do we have the suggestions that were presented in the email yesterday? I thought we'd made some more changes. Mr. Thomas?
3. All the changes are reflected in the report. There are lots of discussion about other areas, but no decisions were made.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so for example, so I'm looking at page 12. So this copy here that's attached to the agenda has the updated changes.
That's
okay.
correct.
So 3.2. Okay, so no more than 3 members of council to participate electronically. Okay, that sounds great. Are we okay? I think we had talked about this as a council, is when we do this is that we have the yellow highlighted part so that we know what's been changed. Does that work? I don't know, Michael, do you do that?
If you're talking about bylaws, we can put in a change. We did do a change to the bylaw section that bylaws would have to be. Bylaw that amends or repeals an existing bylaw should be introduced alongside a staff report indicating the nature of any changes to existing bylaws. So that was trying to capture that too.
Okay. Okay, great.
Once this bylaw is adopted.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's going to take us to, we spoke about the inaugural meeting, right? Okay, time and location of meetings. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. This is an important part. Do we have discussion on this?
I would like to discuss having a hybrid.
Okay.
I like the idea of allowing a daytime meeting so that we have speakers that come from Kamloops or on Zoom so that we're not paying atrocious amounts of money for them to come and whatever. And then we can have the meeting, and then we can also have the nighttime meeting and maybe make everybody happy, or at least balance it out so that people can come if they choose to, and they can pick the day. If we have it on the beginning of the month is the nighttime one, then that's when they come to the meeting, and then vice versa. That's my thoughts.
Okay. Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the nighttime meetings just because it works with my schedule, but that's being a selfish need. Really, I do like the hybrid because when, like you say, when it does come to having speakers, we're putting up hotels and whatnot for Chris to come up with True. It would just be nice to be able to mix it up, and maybe on the speaker days we have afternoon meetings. It's just my personal thought on that. I do like that idea, but yeah, I'm in favor of the evening meetings. Just I know it's not gonna work every time.
Okay. Counselor Herring?
Yeah, I like the hybrid meeting idea as well. Limit some costs. My feeling is we're gonna go, if we went to nighttime meetings, I don't know that we're gonna see a change in participation. So this lets us test the waters in case we do and we see a big bump in public engagement, then totally we can reconsider doing them all at night or something like that. But I think I like that idea of like just taking one step towards it kind of thing.
Okay. Counselor Taylor?
I just would like to ask staff if they see any potential pitfalls that we might not be seeing with the move to alternating.
Just adding an evening meeting, I don't see significant pitfalls at this time. If we're gonna also introduce a different variable, say, one meeting is for delegates primarily, and the other one is, or one is light and one is heavy, that may have an impact on governance, because it would mean if someone missed the cutoff, there's a month delay before it gets before council, potentially.
Go ahead, Counselor Herring.
I think the thing is, you know, ideally speakers coming on the week where in the afternoon makes sense, but in the event it was like a rush proposal or something, there's nothing saying we couldn't spring to have them come out in that meeting's evening, right?
Exactly.
Like, because I think
Follow the cost.
I definitely don't want to see one of the meetings be less like light or heavy kind of thing, because I think we have so little control over that at the best of times. It's just heavy, 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 heavy. So I mean, yeah, as long as we keep the kind of, you know, the meetings with the right amount of content, I think on both meetings, we should be able to avoid that. I really do think we need to think about potentially having less meetings, but I don't know if there's any appetite from anyone else on that. I like the 3-week period in between, just because I think more will get accomplished, and then it'll allow us to focus on decisions and stay out of kind of impacting staff operations. But that's just my take. I don't know how anyone else feels about that.
On the 3-week, I'm unsure of that. I feel like it's a big gap in between meetings, and I feel like maybe we'll lose, I think I would lose touch with what's happening. I like that 2-week. but
Okay.
I do understand the burden that it does put under staff. That puts staff under.
I think from a practical standpoint, sorry, I'm not following protocol here. From a practical standpoint, I think if you put a 3-week cycle, it's easy to remember. It's first and third, like Tuesday. If you put a 3-week cycle, you're gonna struggle to stay on top. I would struggle to stay on top of that. Then when you're throwing in, oh, some of them are going to be evening, some of them are going to be afternoon. If I was staying on council, I'd probably turn up for the wrong day at the wrong time and be in the wrong meeting. So just kind of, it might be hard to throw both of those parameters into the mix at the same time. That's just practically speaking.
Yeah, pretty easy for either or the 2 or 3 week. I think there's going to be pros or cons to whichever we end up choosing in the end. Councillor Sim had said some before, I can't recall exactly what it was in regards to why we should stay the 2 week. I mean, we all got our own opinions towards it, and we're going to have, like I said, pros and cons regardless of what we choose. I don't know what the right answer would be in regards to our meeting intervals right now.
So just to weigh in on that, my thought has been to maintain the 2 weeks. I think it's really important that we look at the priorities and that we are in control of the agenda and how that agenda is set. That is what it is. I mean, we've worked hard this year to try and pare down the 109 or 111 items that you started with, Mr. Thomas.
Yes, acting mayor. 111.
111. So 111. So we've worked hard on that. And I think that that is the role to partner with. I think that there is a danger that with the 3-week cycle, things build up and then you've got something that's even heavier and even more arduous. I think that the points that Councillor Taylor have mentioned is that consistency. I think our community would like us to start building that structure of consistency, even with the modification of a hybrid model, but at least they can follow along. And I think that makes it easier. And I think that is what I've heard is an indication is how to be accountable and to our public in that manner. So with that, and I will say that the hybrid model was echoed by a member in the audience, and I think this, it's been discussed before. So Mr. Thomas, if we do that for 3.4.21, we don't need to address that until we go to 3.4.2.2. Is that right? The time? Because we're going to stick with the first and third Tuesday of each month. So
Okay.
that's a good to go. But it is the beginning times that we are now going to work at. So what you've just heard is the discussion that one Tuesday will be the 2 p.m. and the second meeting of the month would be the evening one.
Okay.
So we have a time of 6:30. We've got it there that would be adjourned no later than 9:30 on the day scheduled for the meeting. And a meeting of council shall not exceed 11 p.m. And I believe that in order to go past the 9:30, that it would have to be affirmative for whole council. So everybody must be in agreement. 2 p.m. and 6:30 is what has been suggested here. Councillor Taylor?
So I was just going to ask if we're moving to 2 p.m. and 6:30 at 3.4.2.2, is the wording on 3.4.2.3 more that the meeting shall last no longer than 3 hours, unless council resolves to proceed to 4.5 hours, like so that
So it covers
that
both
So
ways.
you wanted to do
caveat addresses whether you start at 2 or whether you start at 6:30,
It
the
works.
same consistent kind of requirement there.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the previous one, it has begin at 2 p.m. and be adjourned at 8 p.m. So there was a 6-hour gap in our last.
Do you want it to be 6?
Come close.
It's going to be 12,
So I
12:30.
think, so from what I'm hearing here is that it's the 3 hours and then it has to go to a vote past that.
Past that, and that makes sense.
All right. Does anybody want to push back on a 6:30 p.m. Start? Does anybody want to look at a 6 p.m. or is 6:30 reasonable or a 7 p.m.?
I think 6:30 is pretty good. Personally.
I agree with that.
Okay with that.
Okay.
Feels weird to decide that without Teresa and Ken to a degree, because what if both of them are like, oh, we have an appointment at 6 and need it to be at 7 or something, like, I guess we can discuss it later if that does come up.
Okay, now I just sort of want to hold off on that for just a sec, because when we do get to page 20, we do have to discuss the way that the agenda is laid out. So if we can place hold this that we've chosen for a 2 p.m. and then a 6:30 p.m. We've got the 3-hour time frame. Mr. Penny, you've documented that? You got it?
Yeah.
Thumbs up, good. Okay. Great, so are we just scanning through? Does anybody have anything on the next items?
I have a question.
Yeah,
With respect to 3.4.2.3, the 3-hour time limit, is that an automatic end or is it
No.
requires?
no, it's basically, so what we're saying, because we've got 2 times,
Yep.
is be adjourned no later than 3 hours from the starting, okay, for the meeting, unless council resolves to proceed beyond that time limit. So it's the same thing, but we're just taking out the specified times.
Okay.
Okay, so any questions about special council meetings?
No.
So just to be clear, that is in case that there is, chaos on the council. So I think
Okay.
3.4.4.4 is interesting.
Mhm.
So you can called by 2 or more members of council without the involved mayor, filing a written request directly with the corporate officer. If the mayor fails to make arrangements for the meeting within 24 hours of receiving a proper request to do so. I just want to clarify that if it is called by 2 or more members of council without the involvement of the mayor, and if the mayor has not made arrangements for the meeting within 24 hours of receiving, I'm not seeing, it's by called, does that automatically say, yes, the meeting will go ahead? So 2
Yes,
or,
it does.
okay, that's that. all right.
So the process in the community charter is that the member of council can request a meeting through the mayor.
Okay.
If the mayor fails to act,
Right.
members of council can unilaterally inform the corporate officer that a meeting is being called for the date, time, as per filled out the form.
So 3.4.4.4 is falling off of 3.4.4.3.
Yeah, it's
That's a-
basically, if the mayor doesn't call the meeting, then this is
Yeah.
that provision.
Mhm.
Requested me.
Yeah, request meeting. So as we continue on, does anybody have any comments on page 14?
It's just basic on posting. Looks good to me.
And
Yeah.
there.
Pretty much the same.
Okay, attendance, I think that this is fairly standard. Yep, Councillor Taylor.
Just a question on 3.6.5. Is
Yeah.
that something we currently do, and where do we post it?
We don't currently do that. Well, we do in a sense because the attendance of council is recorded in every minutes that we
Minutes.
post. However, what this is saying is simply have the names, have the meetings.
Your
absent,
attendance
present,
rate?
etc.
I like it. It's a good way to keep,
Keep track.
keep us accountable
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, I
For
agree.
sure.
Question.
Councillor Frizzo?
3.6.4.
Yeah.
4 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings. Wait just a minute. So if the council or counselor misses 4 consecutive meetings, is that what I'm
That's right.
reading?
Yeah.
Or 60 days.
Or
2
60
months.
days?
Yeah.
Okay, further on into this, if you missed 3 committee meetings. I thought
Committee
that committee, yeah, I thought I saw it. That's why I'm asking.
Yep, no, a member of a committee, if they are missing meetings without notice or anything like that, it certainly could be up to the chair, sorry, up to council to decide if that committee member should be replaced.
Okay, so
Mhm.
it's not the same thing.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right.
Good question. Okay, so are we good with 3.6 for the moment?
Yep.
Okay,
Good to hear.
terrific. Oh, Councillor Taylor.
So back to 3.6.4,
Mhm.
is there an allowance there if someone were ill? Or do
Um,
they have to be removed from office?
Well, 3.6.1 under exceptional circumstances, which may include illness
Oh,
or
okay,
injury.
yeah. But not
But that's
exceed
still
60
60 days.
days. So basically, if you're, I don't know,
Okay,
severely
council
ill.
shall at the next regular schedule may do consider the request for a leave and issue the decisions through resolution.
Okay,
That's how I would see that.
Yeah. so it'd be up to
okay, as
council.
long as there's an allowance there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, and who will be absent? That's actually really good there. Okay, we are into part 4, standing committee meetings, and I believe that this is brand new to this bylaw.
Okay. The existing bylaw has standing committees in them.
Well, if maybe you can help me match the dots. I couldn't match the dots when I went through it, but maybe, where do you, help me out, because I'm happy to.
Part 11 of the current bylaw talks about commission, standing, select committee, and advisory bodies, but I believe there is another section as well.
The only reason I ask is because part 4 is really long, like. I mean, it all makes sense, like it actually articulates it well, so. But I just, it's not in what was, and so,
It's maybe just broken out more.
well, minutes of meetings to be made, it was formerly under 11, which I don't know if you've all got copies of the previous one.
No.
No, okay. So the previous one basically was 11.1, 0.2, and 0.3. Talks about minutes of the proceedings of council must be legibly recorded, certified as correct, signed by the mayor or their members, standard contact on minutes, anecdotal minutes, and recording corrections to the minutes. The correction will be handwritten in the actual official copy. What we have here, so, but I don't see standing committee report. So maybe let's just treat it as new and go through it.
May I?
Yeah, go.
Part 11 of the current bylaw, I don't have a page number, but item 51. Standing committees must consider, inquire into, report, and make recommendations to council about all of the following matters. Matters that are related to the general subject indicated by the name of the committee, matters that are assigned by council, matters that are assigned by the mayor. Commissions, standing committees, select committees, or advisory bodies must report and make recommendations to council on all of the following items. In accordance with the schedule of the committee meeting, recommendations coming out of the commission, standing, or select committee or advisory body will be considered by council at the next scheduled meeting of council unless the recommendation is time sensitive.
So sorry, where are you seeing this one?
In the current procedure bylaw?
Yeah, I have it.
Item 51,
51.
yes.
Oh, I
51.
see. Okay, so let's go. Okay, duties of, so that one for anybody, so it's commission, standing, select committee, and advisory bodies. And what we've done in this new one, it's got standing committees.
So
Yep.
the new
I'm slow.
draft
Mhm.
text separates standing committees, commissions, and select committees. It talks about the establishment, who creates them, how they're created, how they're governed, which is primarily through the terms of reference. How the appointment processes will flow for members of standing committees or select committees. Basically, a standing committee or a commission or a select committee or any advisory body is a creature of council. It's created by council. And the same requirements of the community charter that applies to council for governance also applies to advisory bodies, commissions, standing committees, select committees as well.
Okay, so in this part, so in the definition of committee means a standing or select committee established by council in accordance with the community charter. And this is an example of how helpful I found these new definitions. This was great. But in this one, it says the mayor may establish standing committees for matters the mayor considers would be better dealt with by committee. So am I to so under the establishment of the committee, the name of the committee shall be added and shall report to council. It does seem it's a bit different that it's given a lot to the mayor as opposed to if council does. What do you, how does that translate?
The community charter actually legislated that the mayor has that authority.
Okay,
I can find a section.
no, that's okay. But so is it just for so it's just the mayor, or does the council vote on the mayor's recommendation? Like just trying to get the organic nuance to it.
The law says the mayor has that authority unilaterally.
Mhm.
In terms of practice, it would be up to council to, I guess, I don't want to use the word negotiate, but to discuss how they want to implement that. Whether
Right.
it's the mayor determine, however, only implements on the recommendation of council, but it's up to council.
Okay, and
Well, I
could-
mean, it says that half of the committee has to be members of council. So if council didn't want to participate, no committee. Right? Like, So there is a mechanism for council to take that.
Yeah, it's just, does it, with this, does the committee definition, does it need to be changed or is that too nitty gritty? Just a question,
Oh.
right?
You
So
mean-
your committee definition, which is
I
page
see.
5,
Mhm.
says means a standing or select committee established by council in accordance with the community charter, but the community charter is actually the mayor establishing it, so I don't,
But for select, it's council.
let's look at the
Section
definition of
5. So
select.
they're pretty similar sections, like we can
So,
probably review them
May I
together.
read the community charter?
Yeah, that would be,
Section 141 of the community charter is in regards to standing committee. It says the mayor must establish standing committees for matters the mayor considers would be better dealt with by committee and must appoint persons to those committees. At least half of the members of standing committee must be council members. Subject to subsection 2, persons who are not members of council may be appointed to a standing committee. Select committees, section 142, a council may establish and appoint a select committee to consider or inquire into any matters and to report its findings and opinions to council. So select committees, council has jurisdiction. Standing committees, the mayor has jurisdiction, half of which must be council members of council.
so that's great, because I think that the definition for select committees was actually deleted in the new bylaw.
I see. Maybe we could insert that.
Mhm.
I think this is exactly why we're here. So, but let me just, I mean, those were on my notes, but if anybody else sees where I missed yet another one, happy to see it, but I couldn't see it in here. And the definition, it didn't see select.
There's no select committee in this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the committee, we could just kind of add by council or the mayor in accordance with the community charter.
Or we just add the definition of select committee in there. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
If we're gonna add a definition of select committee, I suggest we strike the definition of committee and just have select and
Standing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that would be good. That clears it up, I guess.
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so you're just so repeat that. I don't think I followed that.
I'm suggesting that council strike the term committee and the definition associated with it,
Yeah,
and instead replace it with 2 definitions, one for standing, one for select, because standing could be done by mayor, select has to be done by council.
yeah. And I think that's an easy cut and paste from the previous one. So that's terrific. Where it is, that specifies it perfectly, and then it makes sense with what's going on here. Okay. People were doing great work. Okay, so any other comments as we go through part 4? Okay, so the agenda, the corporate officer and the chief administrative officer, if different, or their designate in consultation with the committee chair, shall prepare the draft agenda for all committee meetings, setting out all its terms for considerations at that meeting. I think that is excellent, because if anybody asks, how does council sort of speak their voice? This is how that's done. This is where that bubbles up. Okay. So for, the only thing that, and maybe it's important or maybe it's not important, but meeting, minutes of meeting, should it be motioned or put in there for the timing of it?
Also,
So council meetings, we have a council meeting, then the minutes are presented at the next one. And I think, does it say that in here?
In the old one, it does.
Yeah.
I kind of like leaving that a bit vague because I think it's better if we prioritize that. And the way we're doing the meetings anyways is they're often inside of the council meeting. Because I think it's like, it's good to have them presented at the next one, but I'm thinking of like the Tourism Wells Gray minutes where sometimes they're not presented and then like a clump were presented at the same time, right? Like, I think we can have flexibility like that. That's my take on it anyways. I don't know what you guys think.
Council comments? I find it difficult. I like live feeds.
Mhm.
To see what's what. We have been, we have kind of waited, but I think it creates better partnerships when they're updated. Like I will say the recent one that I've enjoyed quite a bit is the Arts Council. It feels in time and it helps me sort of look ahead for what could be coming down the pipeline, what we might need to be alert and attuned to, and then what's not missed. And if it is under council, the council should be informed in a timely manner.
Mhm.
And I just think it helps keep us up to date. It also keeps it fresh. And if you don't have the minutes, it's difficult to craft next agendas too.
For sure. I just feel like maybe we're not staying on that schedule much because I don't think some of these committees are on like a get work done every 2 weeks kind of basis, right? Like that's my take on it, but I guess it's 2 weeks after their meeting. So if they're only meeting once a year, that's, you
Then
know,
that's it.
they deliver in 2 years or
Right.
2 weeks. Yeah. Makes sense, I
We don't-
guess.
We
Yeah.
don't have that. So I don't know. Mr. Thomas, what is your thought on having minutes in a timely manner? Is that important or no? What's your thought?
Having minutes in a timely manner is extremely important. However,
Goatee. Oh, sorry. Too soon.
however, it's also important to have policies that allow for operational changes. For example, if we were to start up an EOC, minutes is going to be the last thing on staff's priority list.
Right.
Yeah, I just look like the Trails Task Force Committee, those types of minutes. I think that helps just inform direction. So do you feel with those, that obvious and important exception, do we need to say anything in here?
I don't think it's necessary. I think I understand that council wants minutes regularly and in a timely fashion. Maybe that could be done through the terms of reference for the committee.
Okay.
Yeah. that's
Great.
what I was
Rather
just
than in
gonna
Let's
say.
do that.
I
That
think
sounds a
that's
good
the
plan.
way to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got quorum, then we've got minutes. Here we go. Select committee meetings.
And that's council's establishing.
Yeah. At least one member of the select committee must be a member of council. All other persons designated to be a member of the committee must be appointed by council. Mayor. First meetings, notice of meetings, agendas. Committee chair is involved in that, function of the committee. Quorum, it's all pretty much the same.
Can I ask?
Yeah,
5.2.3,
Yeah.
the mayor is a member of all select committees.
yes.
Does that require attendance by the mayor at all select committees?
No.
No,
Okay, just checking.
good
Ex
question.
officio.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so if everybody is fine with that, we can move on to part 6, which is council proceedings. Now, this one is, when I did the comparison, this one also seems to be new, but, so, Mr. Thomas, tell us why this is new. Oh my gosh, what is this?
6.1.1, I believe is in the existing bylaw. If it's not in this bylaw, there is a policy created by council where the CAO or the corporate officer has been empowered to refer items to department heads. But let me see if I can find that for you.
And that all looks good to me for sure, as long as we get the copy of it. Just so we know that it was addressed to us kind of thing.
Under the current procedure bylaw, item 18.4, the corporate officer shall be granted the authority to screen delegation requests. And if deemed appropriate, refuse to place a delegation on the agenda if the issue is not within the mandate or the jurisdiction of the municipal council. It is in the event the delegation wishes to appeal the corporate officer's decision, the request will be submitted to council for consideration. There's another section here, I'm just trying to find it.
So the only thing that does maybe is that communications addressed to council, which are related to matters that fall within the scope of responsibilities of a particular district department, may at the discretion of the corporate officer be referred to the department directly.
Mhm.
Instead of coming to council.
So in theory, it makes a lot of sense. In practice, it could fall under, it might be misguided where something may fall. Council?
I think the next section kind of covers the risk there, though. Are we reading the same thing? 6.1.
Yeah, and what do you, so, well, no,
Actually,
it doesn't.
um,
Yeah,
if I may,
yeah.
section 24 of the current procedure bylaw. Communications addressed to council which relates to matters that fall within the scope of responsibilities of a particular district department may be referred to by the corporate officer directly to that department. If a matter is referred under section 24.1, a copy of the communication shall be given to each member of council and to the appropriate staff member. An acknowledgement shall be provided to the writer on receipt of the communication advising where the matter has been referred.
So
Um, it's just, this question still stands,
Mhm.
is that you may not see some correspondence.
So what it's saying here then is if it's addressed to council, it can still be sent to a department head instead of council?
Yep.
Or both?
It says in 6.2, though, that we would be copied on the communication. So it would be sent to the department head and then we would receive notice that it was sent to the, so, you know, I'm thinking of it like somebody says, like writes a letter to council because they want their pothole fixed.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, we're gonna like send that to the department. They'll go take a look. We've copied council so they know somebody wrote in about their pothole. Because I think for me, the important thing is that we know those complaints came in,
Mhm.
not so
Yes.
much that we deal with it, because that's your
Yeah,
guys'
it's-
job. You'll just deal
nobody
with it.
wants to, yeah.
You know, but I do think, yeah, it's important that we know so that when we're in line at the grocery store, it's not like, hey, did you get my letter? And we're like, what letter?
Exactly. That's the whole point.
You know?
Okay, so that was a very good catch, Councillor Herring. So I think, are we good with that, everybody?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I think it's a good section to have fleshed out. Where are we at now? Are we preparation of the agenda? That's proceedings. Preparation of the agenda. Anybody see anything there?
The thing that I see.
Yeah.
Is that if we're going to continue with the committee meetings inside the agenda,
Mm-hmm.
it should be also the chair of that committee that is part of the agenda setting.
But that's what was under in the committee's things that we just went through, is that the chair is there. Because remember I said that's where council's voice bubbles up?
Yes.
Did I misunderstand?
Under
'Cause
the
I-
standing committee section.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, yeah.
So in practice, this section would look like if council opted to continue having a meeting inside a meeting, the CAO and corporate officer who are the same person at this point, mayor or acting mayor in the mayor's absence, and the chair of the committee will sit down together, talk about the agendas, the draft agenda.
The one thing that, because I enjoyed the joint session, I thought that was really good. What I also had appreciated in the past is getting a copy of what that draft agenda looked like, just to make sure that it was all reflected in what was discussed, and so that there was no gap. So if I'm not clear and I didn't articulate it well, so when I get to the council meeting, I'm going, well, that's not what I thought. So having that copy before it's published. So you sit down and you have the agenda setting on the Wednesday, let's say, right? Okay, so technically it should be done. The draft copy is then sent to the committee chairs. This is what the agenda looks like. At that point in time, if there has been any miscommunication or something wasn't captured, that's when it could be corrected. Otherwise, it's published.
When it's published, it will still be drafted until it's adopted.
Because that's what started the
To me,
meeting
it's
where you
just a
changed the
courtesy thing.
agenda.
If it's too arduous, I get that too. But that's,
So to have a look at the agenda after you've had the discussion, what's supposed to go on the agenda. It's nice to have a look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Sure,
I was
everything's
thinking
clear.
of having on there. And maybe I should add this or take this off, whatever.
Councillor Taylor?
To allow time for that, because it could be a timing thing. Like
Yeah,
if you're
that-
having the
yeah.
agenda setting on the Wednesday and it has to be out
Friday.
by the Friday, like could the agenda setting be moved forward, or is that too early to try and get everything in to add that cycle?
I think that's probably a question.
Well, I've
for
only
you.
attended one agenda meeting session, so I'm super keen on that. Like, I'm definitely open to that and I'm, but I think that that's where it is. To me, I want to see the draft agenda just to make sure. Because if anything isn't different, it just, it disrupts the flow on the meeting day.
I think, how about for you? Does
The
it make a
challenge would be
difference?
timing, Because
Yeah.
as it stands, we have between 3 to 5 days to do everything from the last council meeting and prepare the next sets of agenda. And so I'm more than happy to do it. Something will suffer. The question is what, and the question is priorities.
Why
So-
can't the, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Herring.
How much time in the week that you're doing the agenda setting is going towards setting the agendas and preparing for the council meeting? Roughly, like if you had to ballpark it.
I would say individually or collectively for the whole team.
Collectively for the whole team.
At least 20 hours. Because setting the agenda topic is the easy part. Writing the report, formulating the analysis, doing the research that supports that topic is where the time consumption really occurs.
Mhm.
And then every department head has to submit those reports to the corporate officer or the CAO, who has to review all of those, make adjustments, and then approve them. Then we could then assemble the entire agenda before we're even in a position to publish that. That's assuming we have no calls, no emails,
Yeah.
no walk-ins, no other inquiries.
And then I just think about like adding, because for me, if I'm that committee chair, it could be 8 hours before I check my email. Because if I'm on a build site or whatever, like I might not be able to look at email, right? So that's just an 8 hour, and probably during business day, because that's when I'm going to be working too, delay on you guys getting your work done. So taking it from 20 hours to 28 hours with an 8 hour pause is kind of like, I don't know that we need to do that. To me, it kind of feels like if you look at the agenda ahead of the meeting and you're like, oh wait, that's not what I thought of, then when it comes time to have the changes to the agenda section, that's when we'd bring it up at the start of the meeting. Hey, I intended to, whatever, that wasn't my intention with this.
Why isn't it the draft agenda done right in the agenda setting for the committee chairs? It's done, it's emailed, you're done, and you've got the day to the end of the business day to review it. Or it's up to committee chairs and say, I'd like to see the copy of this before it goes out.
Is it possible to have it during, or is that?
To have all the reports written?
No,
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 the
just the
agenda
agenda.
item. So when
That's-
to look at a Parks and Recs agenda, technically it could be done at the agenda setting as it's just draft, right? And so then it is then articulated, is this it? Yeah, no, or whatever.
I like that, as long as it's during. I just don't like
I
the
don't like
delay
the
of
idea
it.
of having to do that duplication and being formal about it, but you can just, remove it and say, this is the draft agenda. The reports and everything are filled in, but at least the essence of the topics are captured. And then there's no risk of staff spending time on something that wasn't intended. It's really just a loop around.
I think during the meeting makes sense to me, like
Yeah.
if we can, if that's possible.
Sure, during the meeting, well, during the meeting of the agenda setting, the CAO takes direction on what goes forward and what doesn't, right?
Mhm.
On Friday, while we are working to compile the agendas, if a report isn't finished, I can't put it on the agenda. So a decision has to be made at that point. Which item gets pushed to the next meeting, which item gets put on that particular agenda. It all comes down to capacity.
Okay, but it still didn't take away from the fact that draft agenda in the meeting can be established. And then if the report attached to that item isn't completed, it's just, Councillor McKenzie, just to let you know, we've had to lift that. It's that simple, isn't it? It's a courtesy of how there's been a meeting.
Mhm.
And then what happens? I'm obviously disconnected here.
I think I'm hearing what you're saying, but the agenda settings that I've been to, you're not in front of the computer, right?
No.
No, we're sitting in a meeting, writing things out. So it's not a simple thing of going.
Well, then let's go to where the computer is.
So in the previous agenda meetings, what we have done was using the same format council has for its current agenda, put the topic areas in, print that document out and bring it to the discussion. I take my notes on that particular form. I go back to the deputy corporate officer. I say, these are the changes requested by the committee chair and the mayor, and make sure all department heads is aware of that.
So then print out two. You have the one, give one to the committee chair, and they can fill in their topics, whatever the topics are. So that's being done right there.
Well, I think what you're saying is you'd fill all that in and you just type it up later, right? And I mean, either way, I think we're gonna get it Friday. And it's our responsibility as council to read it beforehand. And if we see something wrong, we could let you know Sunday at
But
night
still-
that like, hey, I read this and this, this was off, and we have time to fix it before the meeting, right? I'm just hesitant to add to the process because I get the feeling that the more steps we have and the more things we lock in through this policy, the more complicated some of this could get. And it might be good to leave it a little loosey-goosey and let it shake out as it
Agendas aren't
will.
loosey-goosey.
For you, like.
They're not loosey-goosey because they're actually what we follow and what we report on.
Yeah, but there's
Anyway,
more
I
than
think
one
maybe
way.
the answer is that committee chairs can have that preference and what works for them. How does that sound? And they can ask that. And I think that, if there's an option and depending if time's available, maybe Michael sits in or not. And just, there are computers, there's laptops, there's got to be
Yeah.
a way to adjust this. I know that I've gone through the past 8 years and I was really happy with it and it helped me refer back. I did feel a little off foot the last Parks and Rec because it wasn't quite as I thought. And I stumbled for sure. So that's just why I share it. I like the double check and then it just was clarity, but committee chairs can do as they want. Does that work for everybody?
Works for me.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we've got that. So here we have order of council proceedings, okay? So there's some changes here, all right? The notable changes are 6.3.1.5 declaration of conflict of interest. We've added 6.3.1.6, the TNRD electoral A. Also included in here is we've got the public question and comment period only on agenda items at the beginning of the meeting. Go ahead, Lynn. Councillor Frizzle.
Oh, yeah, no, sorry, I thought it was moved. Sorry, I see it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Delegations and presentations is a new placement, and I love the way that this is all formatted. I think that the formatting of the presentation is helpful. People can then leave. This is essentially what we've got, which I think. And then we've got the unfinished business, which is reconsideration of tabled items and reconsideration of deferred items. I thought this was awesome.
Mhm.
Then what we also go into is we've got the mayor's report, councilors' reports. This is super. This is the CAO report, new business staff reports, bylaws, committee of the whole, correspondence, required information only, notice of motions in camera and adjournment. Other business was deleted and which I don't know if that's important. I found that I always used it as a nice catch-all area. But I am missing comments by the public at the end, personally.
Because it's up at the beginning.
Yeah, question comment period 6.3.1.7.
Mhm. And
Councillor Harry?
I personally like that at the end of the meeting rather than the start, just because I think there's a chance for, before a discussion happens, the public to kind of have like not a sense of where the discussion's at. So it might limit their ability to have effective kind of additions to the conversation, right? Because they might hear the conversation in whatever section of the meeting that's relevant. And then at the end, they can say, well, based on your conversation, did you guys think of this kind of thing? So I like it at the end, but I get why it's moved to the front because yeah, sometimes I feel bad for people having to sit through like 40 bylaws while they're waiting to have their moment to
However,
chat.
that's probably a good thing for them to see the process. and how we
Agreed.
get
True.
Where we get.
Agreed, yeah.
Councillor Taylor?
So I was actually looking at the delegations even going further ahead and switching 6.3.1.6 with 6.3.1.8 to move delegations even further up the agenda.
Mr. Thomas, what do you think about that?
Whatever council wishes to do.
Oh.
I think for
Councillor Harry?
me, maybe the TNRD director is a delegation. My concern is that when we had the what's it called? The Joint Services Committee. Those meetings were a lot of fluff a lot of the time because if nothing was going on between the two, it just ended up being a chance, you know, to shoot the breeze and it wasn't really that productive. And my worry is that depending who's in this role of TNRD director, that could be a longer or shorter section. I feel like if they need to speak to us, then maybe that's a delegation request.
I think that we've made this was a new thing. Mr. Thomas, maybe you want to speak to that.
Council made a previous commitment when the general manager for TNRD came and presented about the dissolution of the Joint Services Committee to add TNRD director to the agenda.
Every time.
So they don't have to present.
It's just that.
It's just an
a
option.
placement for
Okay.
if there is something that they wish to bring forward, and there are some, I guess, limitations for the duration and other parameters around that as well.
Councillor Frizzle?
Would that not also be an opportunity for us to speak to the representative about the Sportsplex or transit or whatever, that we work together with them on, that we can bring something to them as well, information to them
That's correct.
on
There are two-
whatever. Because we have that 60-40 with the Sportsplex,
Mhm.
and then we have that transit. I don't know what the split is, but yeah, so that's an opportunity to do that, I
Yep.
think.
There are two political avenues through which council can engage TNRD board, directly through the representative of council on TNRD board, which would be the mayor, or through engaging the TNRD area A director in this format.
And I believe that this could also be, so for example, the manager could come and report, and it could also be a written report.
Mhm.
So written information. However, to Councillor Taylor's point, do we want it further down the agenda and bump up the delegations in advance? I personally kind of like to keep the delegation so at least there's part of council, because I do think that it is nice to at least see the work of council. It's not as far down as it was, so it's been bumped up. But that's my input. Councillor McKenzie, what are your thoughts?
Well, personally, I like the layout of this. It doesn't really matter either way for 6.3.1.6 to be swapped. I'm good either way with that layout, but I'm not a fan of the questions being that high up. I'd like to see
public
them more in
questions.
the, public question comment
Yeah.
period. I still, as Councillor Herring said too, I think that should be back towards the bottom where we've been having it myself.
So I thought about this and I've asked a couple of other councils. So I'd love your input on this. What if there was a public inquiry? Because it's only related to items on the agenda. And so those questions, which, and I'm hoping this is maybe your intent, which is to inform some of the discussion of council. Then at the end, you have comments by the public. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Thomas? What would be some possible blind spots or gaps to that?
Some of the concerns, I think having one placement would be sufficient to achieve the objective of transparency and engagement with the public. I think having two placements may inadvertently set up an adversarial atmosphere between
That
council
is
and the
the,
public.
that is the double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah.
So council, where do you stand on this one?
I'm standing with dropping the public questions down to the bottom. Not
Okay.
To the bottom, but
Right, where it's traditionally been.
where it's traditionally.
Councillor McKenzie?
I agree with that, 6.3.1.22, I
Okay,
guess it would be essentially.
okay.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah.
Yep.
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, that's, yeah, I'm
Okay.
fine with that being moved.
Great.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay. This declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest, I struggle with that one. I think it's already in by the nature of it. But if it's not clearly defined, then how do you know? And then you're caught. So to me, and especially in a small town, there can be lots of, tripping points. If you don't know, then you haven't done your due diligence. But at the time of discussion, or depending on what happens, it's happened before.
It's happened to me.
Yeah.
And that's why I like it, because it will give me that trigger, that reminder.
Yeah.
That I have to step
But
up.
what if you don't realize it and then you don't? Like it's supposed to be, and then you have a team that actually,
Well,
sorry, I want to hear.
No,
you.
I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, you can come in knowing that you're going to be sitting with a conflict of interest or whichever. I'm
Mhm.
not going to say that until it's sworn in. And that's when you declare it. There will at some point always come into a meeting where you go, whoa, I can't talk about this. I can't be part of this conversation. And then that's when you'd have to declare it within the meeting, I would say.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I like having it explicitly there as a reminder that it's something coming into the meeting that we all need to pause and say, hold on a minute, is there anything here where, and I think if we don't identify it and then, or I won't be here, but, and then you go down a route that, and then you realize, I think that there should be an allowance for that. But at the moment, we're not making any mention of it. And then there's still that risk that we'll not identify it further in the
it's in the
meeting.
oath of office though.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
in the
but
oath of
I think
office.
there've been times when it hasn't necessarily happened because we're not being explicit. And I think having that explicit item encourages all to pause at the beginning of the meeting and acknowledge that.
As long as there's enough data, or if as long as there's enough information that would allow you. I feel that that's an error to be caught, but I just stand as one voice. Councillor McKenzie, your thoughts?
Well, we've survived the last 4 years without having that in there. And I think, I mean, I could go either way on this. I see points all around the table about it. It is one last final chance, and like you say, one last reminder before you go into it. But if you've read up on everything, you should know what you're getting into, where you're gonna have conflict of interest regardless. So got on the fence about this. I'm good
Yeah, and
with that one.
I mean, one way to address that might be to just add a word there, declaration of known conflict of interest or pecuniary influence. Because, at some point you could totally halfway through a conversation realize, oh, we're talking about my neighbor. I gotta go, like, and so I think the known at the start just allows you if, yeah, I thought about this and I am out, but there's always a chance later to just
You're
suddenly realize that
gonna-
this is out of your depth kind of thing.
It could
or-
be that it's a funding issue or something, and then it becomes it.
Yeah.
The stringency, I like your suggestion. Mr. Thomas, what do you think about Councillor Herring's suggestion of known?
The legislation already provides for inadvertent and non-consequential conflict of interest as an exemption to council. The reason this is extremely important, conflict of interest is one thing. The pecuniary interest is where there is real substantive potential consequences to a member of council for not declaring it. I've seen it in some recent examples in the city of Vancouver as an example, where a member of council was a restaurant owner and they were dealing with the bylaw that impacted restaurant patios in Vancouver. And that ended up in court, which if it was to happen, and it could happen in any community, would mean additional resources for the local government to spend to respond to those litigations. So and also when I joined the District of Clearwater last year, when I present the agendas, I also wrote a blurb in the language of the email reminding council that here's the agenda. If you have a conflict of interest, please be cautious about that because of those impacts. It's a pretty serious topic. And I recommended it at the beginning of the meeting after the adoption of the agenda, because when you look at the mechanics of how the meeting operates, if the declaration is not known by the chair of the meeting, the chair's ability to effectively manage that meeting would potentially be compromised.
Mhm.
Well, this is the will of council. I know that I have been caught on it and there was not enough information to declare a conflict regardless. And so I have a particular sensitivity to this one. And I take my oath fairly seriously. The other thing to note is that it is only the council member that can actually remove themselves. They can stop the meeting, but the council member does need to. So it is, it's over to each of you and how you want to proceed, because this is the playbook.
Yeah, I personally like where it is. I think it is good to have it at the start, but I would like to see just, yeah, like I said, the word declaration of known conflict of interest. And that's less to change the substantive purpose of it and more just to give the public an idea that, like, yeah, it could happen later as well, because we could all stumble into it. And it is protected, like you say, in the charter, but it's just spelling that out for whoever's watching the meeting, knowing that
I think
there's
it's a
more than
general
one
point.
time that you could jump in and say, I shouldn't be part of this conversation.
Councillor McKenzie, you good with that?
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Councillor Frizzle?
I'm good.
Okay, is that an insertion? Does that work? Okay, perfect. I think that's a really great compromise. Okay. All right, anything else? So we've got so we've decided that, so we like the delegations, adoption of minutes of committee meetings. We've got committee of the whole, which is in there. Mr. Thomas, let's say that the mayor decides that he would like to go back to committee meetings. Would this committee of the whole then allow for that to be under there as an agenda item? So rather than being inserted, we went back to the way it was.
I don't think I followed the question.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Which item are you referring to?
Committee of the whole.
committee of the whole,
And we-
Are we still
19.
talking about the order of business?
Yeah.
Yeah, 19, 63119.
63119, okay.
okay, so we've got committee of the whole. Let's just see where we go here. So presently, we've got, even if we look at our agenda in front of us, the way it runs is we've got the mayor's report, councillor's report, and then it went right to committee of the whole. I love this idea of the CAO report followed by the new business of the staff reports, followed by bylaws, and then committee of the whole. The way we run it now is that the committee of the whole follows after council reports. So I just want to make sure that if the mayor said, I want to go back to just having a Parks and Recs, this is where it can go. So it wouldn't be it, fabricated within the agenda. Do you remember how we used to do it? I think,
I do remember how we
Okay.
still do it. So,
Sorry, are you referring to separate meeting at 1
Yes.
o'clock?
yes,
So Acting Mayor Sim is referring to how we used to have a separate meeting. So I think the question is, if council ever were to revert back to that, we would need to come back to this bylaw and make that change, is my
or
assumption.
do we? Like, I just want to make sure in case the mayor wants to change it, does this need, and it's important that we talk about it now. But remember, I did say, place that hold on the timing of the meetings, just in case there is room for that. But we've done it before, so if we revert back, but as long as we're talking about it.
I don't see that you would need to change a bylaw if it's a
Okay.
separate meeting, no.
Great, thank you very much. That is it. So good. So then we go to committee of the whole, and then we move down into correspondence, notice of motions. What do you guys think?
I think we've covered the changes I wanted to see in it.
Okay, other business was deleted.
I mean, how, other businesses sometimes a catch-all to conveniently place it, but I can't think of one thing that couldn't have fit somewhere else in the agenda. Right, whether it's notice of motion or new
is-
business, or, because other business and new business, like, really, what's the difference?
Or what, Councillor Taylor, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Herring. I've no concern. I mean, there is also the option of introduction of late items, rather than waiting for other business. But
Or putting into a council report. I've been told to do that before, so instead of.
What was the rationale for taking it out?
I couldn't understand the reasoning behind it. And,
Yeah.
for example, I noticed that in the past, or in the current procedure bylaw, council would go through the motions of reading when the next meetings would be. When we also have that reflected in the schedule attached to the package too. So we're looking at streamlining, creating an efficient system. That's all.
Right, but in there, we would still be reading out when the next meeting is. Yes or no?
You could certainly do that under the council report, but currently we have, the way our procedure bylaw is structured and our council package is constructed, it's almost like it's treated as a separate item on the agenda. Whereas you could do this under the councilor's report or the mayor's report.
I like that.
I don't. And the only reason being is if it's not laid, actually, let's hear from Councillor Frizzle.
Why? No, why don't you like it? I want to hear it.
Because I think that we've made some significant changes that our public is still getting used to. And I think saying it out actually specifies what it is. It's not necessarily, it's just a good verbal trigger cue. Oh, okay, that's coming up. Sometimes packages are quite thick and it can be lost, but when it's said out loud, I actually appreciate it. I've been really amazed at how many more people are starting to tune into listening to the meetings. Saying it out loud is just another way to engage people in what's coming up. I just think it's not a big deal for me. I like it. And I also like to know what else is coming up. Or let's say if, the Trails Task Force, oh, it's coming up on Tuesday. I noticed when they started to meet more frequently, like it's a verbal thing that was helpful for me.
I like having that information. I just don't know, I see what you mean. When you look at the agenda, there was like every committee listed out with its next meeting date, and half the time it would be like, I'm thinking of Forestry Service Working Group, where it's TBA, or the board where TBA, and it just felt like we don't need to go over that. But I do agree, if there's one coming up, it's nice to be like, oh yeah, there is whatever, committee coming up. So I'm somewhere in the middle, because I don't see the point in going through it all.
Maybe as a compromise, it could be listed under the CEO's report, future meetings.
Yeah, I think that there's also something to be said about reviving the council calendar month at a glance. And that was a very helpful tool. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a good thing to have.
That was, how many
agree. I
people were
think-
saved by
Yeah,
that?
I think that's actually something I want to talk about with Merlin in that meeting that we're having on Monday, is I think we really got to get tight on that again, because I really do like having the month at a glance picture ahead, because it just lets me, like, sometimes even this meeting, I was like, I think 2 days ago, I was like, oh, shit. You know, like, so it's nice to just have that. I know this is a special meeting, so it's a bit different, but it is nice when something's laid out at the start of the month.
Yeah, it's too easy to overbook yourself sometimes. And before you know it, if at least you can plan ahead. I do like that idea. having that.
But yeah, I don't know if that needs to be in here, or if that's just how we work together for the next term kind of
No, it's
stuff,
just-
right? Like,
It sounds like it could be a cut and paste in the CAOs. I still favor having it actually in there, but so far I've been in the minority a lot
Well,
today, so
you
I'm
ha-
okay
you
with
have a
that.
bit, But I've always struggled with that. I just go, really seriously, I have to tell you the date. That's how
Yes.
I felt.
yeah.
Oh, I love that, but I am just an overkeener too.
It could, I like just it could be sitting right there, but do we have to go through the whole, everybody sitting there going, yes, the next
Okay.
meeting's on December 1st, the next meeting's on December 3rd.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, that seemed like very kindergartenish. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that's how I felt about it.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Okay, I think that Mr. Thomas has come up with a good one, is
Yeah,
that
I
we've
like
got
it
the
a lot.
upcoming, that it's in the CAO report. It could be under the fact that we've got committee of the whole. Because with the committee of the whole, we're gonna go committee of the whole. However, we don't have select committee reports. Where,
We could certainly add that.
well, it's just that, like, I mean, that is where you hear about the Trails Task Force, right? Like, I don't see it on the agenda. Go, Councillor Taylor.
I think the intent is that it's part of your council report. So if you've just attended the Trails Task Force, that should be, so when I say, oh, on that day I attended the Trails Task Force, and these are the items we discussed.
Right.
I
I
think
like that a
that's
lot.
the
I think
idea.
that
like
makes much more sense.
Except if you're not here. Then it does convey out, like, you can't, if you're not here and you're not reporting out, remember, we are accountable to the public. And so select committee reports, it allows people to see what we're doing. Remember that although we see it, there's other people that are looking, I'm gonna look and see what this committee is, or what the community is doing. You know, I just think it's a visual of what types of things are happening. Mr. Thomas, yes.
It would also be reflected under adoption of minutes from committees meetings.
Oh, yeah.
I like select committee reports. I think it just, it shows what's happening, you know, and what's going on. It's just mine.
So where would you want, you put that after the committee?
Yep.
Before the committee of the whole, after the committee of the whole?
Yeah, I like what we have. I like seeing who's doing what. I think it also shows to the public who is representing and who's being out there. For me, it's,
But I think those adoption of committee meetings, that would be the chance to bring anything forward that happened at the meeting, but it would prevent us from having those, you know, the forestry commission being brought up where it's like, it hasn't met in 6 months, so why have Barry say anything, right? Like, it allows that to be that section, I think.
don't you think it's, oh, sorry.
So you're saying, but under the adoption of minutes of committee meetings, put a subsection, reports of, whatever.
Yeah, well, I think that the minutes is how they're reporting typically, is it not? Like, that's how we're getting the information,
Well,
right?
it's
So,
select committee report, so you report out.
okay,
You report out, not the minutes, because the minutes are often in brevity or something, but it is
Mhm.
reporting out. So,
see, to me, that does fit under the council report, right? Because we don't write a report if we're not here, right? So right now, if we talk about whatever meeting, the Joint Services Committee, and I'm not at that meeting to discuss it, there's no written report that I made on that. So there will be no report out either way. Even if the section's there, it'll just be for somebody to say next meeting, whenever, right? To me, it's the minutes are all that's technically being reported out, and the rest should be covered by your individual council report. That's my take.
okay, Councillor McKenzie,
Yeah, I do like the idea of having it. I'm kind of on the fence as well with this. I seeing good sides of both. It'd be in the minutes, adoption of the minute does cover that. Yeah, it could go out in your reports too. Yeah, I'm on the fence with this.
Councillor Frizzle?
I like the idea of having the council report being a little bit beefier so that you can.
Yeah, I just extended myself to 25 minutes, thanks. saying.
Take it back, take it back.
Okay, I would like, not for anybody else. But just to be able to say, in the my council report that I was at the Tourism World's Gray meeting and this is what happened. And that's where I report out.
Okay.
I like that.
Councillor Taylor?
There is an option to submit a written councillor report if you know you're not going to be here and you've got something really pertinent that you want to report out. But I agree with Councillor Herring's comment that if you're not here, it's not going to get reported out no matter where on the agenda it is. So unless you submit a written councillor report. So I like the idea of like, let's get a few items, reduction of items and build it into
Build it into
existing
other things.
places. Yeah, so build it into the councillor report.
So the information's still there. It's just,
All right, so we'll close this off because I certainly hear what everybody says. I will close by saying that for me, I like how it reads on the agenda. I like when our public sees it. I like them seeing what we are involved in. Of all the things that take up time, this is not the one that I'm going to die on because I like the accountability to community and seeing it. There's no reason why we have to, say what it is. I don't understand why we couldn't select committee reports. The dates are listed there. Does anybody have anything to report out on that point? I do feel that there is a risk. I know that we've got some great stuff that are going to be coming up for committees, etc. That is going to make for very long and could be arduous council reports. Having it split out this way, it is a focused way to align thoughts.
so again, where are you wanting to split it out?
I
Like
just
where on
underneath the
agenda?
committee of the whole and then select committee reports and committee representation. It's just subtitles under there.
Yeah.
I
That's
guess
it.
for me, I kind of struggle with the opposite of you, like where you have a lot of like 25-minute council reports. I have a lot of nothing to report, right? Because as somebody who's fairly like introverted, a lot of these events I'm not front and foremost with, and I don't have other roles with the district like you or Lynn do that you can report in on. So for me, that is my council report. Like what I did for council is the work I would participate with in a committee a lot of the time. So I like that idea of making the council reports a bit beefier because then it shows the work that individual councilors are doing so that the public can see that stuff. Whereas I feel like if we leave that to the extra kind of piece and then we separate all the chunks of our work, it can appear like we're just reading off the agenda what date the next meeting is and maybe not cover that thing. That's my take on it. But
Okay, but there's nothing to be said that you couldn't do it in your council report. And then when the mayor says selects committee reports, anything else to report out, the dates of the next meeting. And that is, it can be rolled out. For me, my issue isn't on the reporting. It's what's conveyed to the public and making it easy for them to see the work of council. So let's close this off. It's you guys, it's your decision. What would you like to see? So we leave it off and we keep it as presented, or we add the select committee and the committee representation as we have it. No sitting on the fence. Go.
No, I do like what you say with that. I mean, it's not like it's a time consuming thing, putting the dates out and conveying it to the public like that. These are upcoming meetings. So, for all of the 30 seconds it takes us to go through it. Yeah, sure, it's getting streamlined by removing it. But really for the time it takes, we can't put our stuff, any reports to our own report, council reports anyways. Do we really gain by taking that off for the time it takes? I don't think so.
Okay, so you're fine with adding
I
it?
would be fine with keeping
Okay,
it.
Councillor
on there.
Frizzle.
I still don't like being in kindergarten.
Okay, so what would you like to do?
I would, like what I said,
You-
just do it in the,
Council reports?
we're sort of
Okay.
on the same wavelength. My reports are always just very.
Yep.
And so in the council report, I could report out anything that I did, any committee meeting. Select meeting.
I'm the same there for sure.
Yep, I'm fine with it staying in councillor report, or moving it into the.
Then
councillor
that's what we'll
report.
do is we'll keep it the way it is. Let's just all make a note of this today. It's gonna be an exciting 4 years. I got,
Are you gonna point fingers out?
no, I'm just going to smile and chuckle, okay? And you guys can too, so, but I appreciate, this was a good conversation because this is the playbook, so this is what this is for. We're moving along quite quickly now, so correspondence, I don't think anything's there, right? All we're adding is comments from the public. I'm replacing it to where it is, yes,
I see 2 changes so far. Placing public comments lower down,
yep,
just between notice of motion and in camera. And adding known before conflict.
That's it.
Yes.
yeah. Governance procedure. This is actually, I think, this is the governance procedure. I think this is super exciting because this is really fun to do. And we haven't done a particularly good job of it. So we should pay attention. This, not today, it's because it outlines it.
I don't see the fun. What fun are you
Yeah,
talking
me
about?
either. I missed the fun section.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Herring, like there is a whole way of
Oh.
speaking. It's super cool.
Ugh,
Really?
opposite of cool. I guess like this one for me, I get why we have to do it.
Totally.
Because you have to like kind of imbue the respect necessary because there's going to be cases where somebody's acting out of line. To me, this stuff it has the element of classism that keeps the public from being able to participate at an appropriate level. Because titles like that, they're artificial separation. All of us are no different than anyone in that audience. And so that I don't like, but I get why we have to do it. It's like, as much as I personally am twigged by this, I'm like, yeah, whatever, let's just blow past
However,
that.
it actually is there to protect staff.
Yeah,
It's there to protect
it's the
staff.
respectful conduct.
It is
kind
the
of stuff.
respectful conduct, and I actually value it because of that and how it goes. And that is why I'm hoping maybe in this next council, we're gonna change some layouts so that we will see this. To me, this is great. But anyway, let's keep moving on because we got a lot of work to do. Adjourning no quorum, anybody there? Debate? Anybody see anything there?
No.
Okay. We've got the traditional territory acknowledgement, introduction of late items. I like the fact that the TNRD thing is explained about how that roll. I thought that was really good. That is on page 23.
Well, I
Go.
Just one question I had on the conflict of interest. Do you have to leave the room? Is it required that you leave the room? Okay,
Yes.
Mhm.
that's what I wasn't sure if you just could sit there and be quiet, but you have to, leave. Okay, no matter what.
May I explain that a little bit?
Sure.
The reason that's, my interpretation of the reason that's included in the legislation is because it can have an undue influence on the remaining members who are tasked with debating the issue.
You know, the
Mhm.
eyeballs and frowns.
Body
and
language.
Smiles. I get it.
So then we move through, we've got delegations. I mean, if you want to spend more time on it, or if you're happy reasoning forward.
I think we'll have to be a little stronger on the public when they do speak, that they speak on what is on the agenda and not on.
I think we've been flexy on that because sometimes it's easy stuff, right?
Oh, I
Like,
know.
you know, if it's like Annabelle bringing up an issue, like 9 times out of 10, we're like, yeah, okay, we can quickly answer that,
Most
right?
time she brings up the transit.
Yeah.
Not happy.
Totally. But I mean, I do see where that could go wrong also. I get you,
Yeah.
right? Because there's been times where people get pretty verbose.
That's what I was.
So if we move forward, so we've got unfinished business.
Sorry, may I highlight something?
Yeah, please.
Page 24, 6.4.15. Minutes requirements, so there can be situations where a council may excuse everybody in the room to have a private discussion. The corporate officer has a legal responsibility to keep accurate records of the meetings. And if the corporate officer is also excused, that duty falls squarely to the mayor to ensure.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
The community camera section is probably a little bit more fleshed out as well, which council will get to later.
I think like it's covered in here, but I really like the delegation time limit. And
Mhm.
if we can find a way to reinforce that, because like MIABC does not listen. They just present as long as they want to talk. You know, we could have some like music just to buzz them off or something at 10 minutes. But yeah, sometimes,
Turn the mic off.
yeah, totally. Because sometimes like I get when people go over, but what I'm thinking of is like the RCMP with Grant. It's like, it's great to get the high level, but sometimes I'm like, okay, this has gone on for a while now and I think we're good, you know? So I like the time limit. I just wonder how we can strengthen like sort of our enforcement of the time limit.
I always have a clock.
We will be having time clocks that will be controlled by the presiding member to assign and extend or not, if council so wish to.
I like that. Minus 30 seconds for every time they say something mean or something.
So new business staff reports, all reports from staff must either be verbal or written. Verbal reports to council may consist of material that is of an informational nature only. All reports from staff that requires action from council must be in writing. I really appreciated having that
Mhm.
laid out. Anything for the bylaws or anything there? Is there anything that you added that you would like to draw attention to, Mr. Thomas?
Yes, acting mayor. A key part of governance is council decides on the policies of the organization and the community. And when the CAO or the staff is tasked with coming up with policy, without having the benefit of the ability to read minds, the staff won't know which direction council is intending the policy be crafted towards. And so 6.4.23.1 says prior to the development of the proposed bylaw or policy, the CAO or corporate officer may request broad directions from council prior to developing the text of the bylaw or policy. Just so that, because in my experience in other communities, initially, I would be asked to develop a bylaw or policy. I go, I do so, I come back, and then council is like, well, that's different. How would I know before without asking the question? So I'm proposing a model of council wishes to develop a bylaw policy. For example, the asset disposal policy, when I had brought forward the sale of the backhoe, and council said, we understand we need to deal with this. However, we don't want to create a policy gap, create a policy, then we'll revisit this issue. And we ended up selling the backhoe at a higher price, ironically, which is great, using the existing policy at the time. So getting council's direction where to go with the policy creation is important. Another example would be the DCC bylaw. One of the discussions that came up throughout the community open house that we had was whether council was going to require the payment of DCCs at the time of subdivision or at the time of construction through permits. The impact of that one policy decision, depending on the size of the development, could go north of $1 million. So that's a serious financial interest to the district. And I said, that goes back to council first.
Comments from council?
Yeah, I think that speaks to it, something when we were at, I believe it was Silga or LGLA, I really liked, there was a speaker who talked about that, like, we shouldn't be looking for gotcha moments, right? And I think that's something I'm gonna strive for more in the next term, is trying to make sure that you're aware of my concerns before the meeting, so you have a chance to just like address them, do some research or whatever, so you know what the question is. Because I think our intention is never to put staff on the spot without giving you a heads up. It's just sometimes that we're, in my own case, I'm late with coming up with the thought, as in like it's barely thought out as it comes out of my mouth. But I think, yeah, my goal for the next term is to make sure that before the meeting, we've had some of that general discussion. So we're not playing that game of like, let's change it now, but instead so that it's like the conversation is kind of at the last stages where we've all
Discussed it.
discussed
I
it.
just want to be clear on what you're saying. So just, you're not suggesting we have discussions prior to a meeting. You are suggesting that if you, because Councillor Bamford was always very good at this. He
Mhm.
brought his questions
Yeah.
in advance. You are not suggesting council is having a discussion.
No, it's individual.
Okay.
Here's what I'm concerned about within this, so that we have answers. So when the discussion happens in council,
Okay.
staff's not left going, well, I'll come back in 2 weeks with an answer to that because we didn't give them a heads up, something like that. It's more where I'm at. Definitely, because yeah, we can't have discussion before, but I mean, between one counselor and,
But you would go to the CAO and say, this is my concerns.
yeah, totally.
And so then when it comes to the council table, when you say what it is, you're gonna say, it's not a surprise that
Yeah,
you're here.
exactly,
The
yeah,
discussions that we all have. And
exactly,
if it
yeah.
goes wherever way you want. Yeah.
That's my take. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that.
All right, so the bylaw and council policy development, I think this is where Mr. Penny, this is where you said you've made some amendments so that we have the before and after, or no? I just want to know, because I found earlier, but okay, so where are we going here? So is this just about the development, not amendments? Is that right?
That's correct. The inception point of generating a new bylaw or policy. Earlier, council did
Yeah.
include a change to have it fleshed out.
Okay, so in the case of developing a new bylaw, and if council has got feedback, then if it's been developed, when it comes back to the council table, it would follow having, these are the highlights that council asked to be made.
That's
Right.
correct.
Okay. Okay,
I'd also like to draw your attention to 6.4.23.5. All bylaws or policies introduced at a council meeting must be acted upon. Now, how council acts upon that is completely up to council. It could be deferred, it could be tabled, it could be withdrawn, it could be lots of different options. The reason that is important is that we don't inadvertently create a scenario where public policy documents are languishing without a direction on it.
So you're saying if when it's on the agenda, we have to do something.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense
Yeah.
to me.
okay, anything else moving forward that you'd like to draw to our attention? Because these are good contributions.
Not in this section, Acting Mayor.
Okay. So I just want to maybe just double check the intention of 6 point on page 28. essentially that in the committee of the whole, so if the committee of the whole makes a recommendation to refer it to council, is anything in here would allow us to do it that same day?
Absolutely.
Okay,
6.4.24.1, council may at its discretion host a committee of the whole meeting during or separate,
mhm,
prior to each committee, prepare the agenda, etc.
mhm.
6.4.24.5, members of council may adopt resolution within the committee, which shall become a recommendation to council consideration. Then on page 29, a resolution originating from the committee of the whole shall be recorded in the minutes, be brought forward to the next
Okay.
scheduled meeting, or be brought forward to a meeting of council immediately preceding the committee of the whole. So immediately following the committee of the whole, which would be rise from the committee, you're back into the actual regular council meeting. Then you could make your decisions.
I have a question. 6.4.24.5. Members of council may adopt resolutions within the committee, which shall become a recommendation. That seems backwards. It seems to me it should be members of council may make a recommendation, members within the committee make a recommendation to council. I'm a little, that just seems like we've adopted a resolution and then we're making a recommendation to council that's already been done.
You adopt the resolution as a committee, though.
Yeah. So then you make another one to recommend it to council?
So any resolution adopted by a committee automatically becomes a recommendation to
Oh,
council.
okay. Just in my
Yep,
head
no,
there for a
this-
minute.
this is good stuff.
Great. So that's point 6. Anybody have anything for this very long section? Well, how do you guys feel?
Yeah, I mean, I thought 0.6 made like most of the rest of it made a lot of sense. It seemed to be pretty in order with what we did before.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything jumping out at me as majorly different.
No, not on this.
Well, the thing is about all of this is that we will only find where there might be gaps is when we bump into it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's very true.
6.4.25.1, the community charter specifies there are only 2 ways council can actually make decisions, by bylaw or resolutions. And a resolution could be effective to create a policy. Which is why staff asked for, is there a resolution?
Right.
This is also super important when it comes to financial matters, because the auditors often ask us for the resolution, and if we don't have one, that would not go very well.
So 6.4.25.10, that whole section, like that's how it's always been. That is my understanding of the way this stuff is supposed to be run. But we're obviously a lot more flexible than that in reality. And I think as we went into this term, I kind of struggled with that at first because I didn't know like, am I allowed to speak again? I already spoke, right? But the way we've just done it sort of so far is we're like, yeah, just, like keep talking, keep debating. If the debate goes far enough, then Merlin will say, okay, let's call the question, or okay, yeah, I've heard from you, next you. But it's not necessarily following, like we don't have a 2-minute timer, we don't have all this. And I really don't want that to be our future either, because I think in this context, we get a lot more done by just having candid discussions like we are now, rather than following, okay, Lynn, this is your 2 minutes, go, So like this can be used, but I wish there was a way to make this as like, if necessary, we'll enforce these rules.
To that, unless Mr. Thomas, you want to reply?
There's a simple way to do that. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules of debate. Motion passed, boom, you have freedom.
Yeah,
Simple.
I also don't know where we've had such vigorous debate it's ever been an issue. We're
Yeah.
hoping for-
yeah. I mean, I think we've had lots of discussions that we were going over how many times we're supposed to speak. And we've never once made an exemption kind of thing. It's just that I think in general, our council is very happy about discussion, not against it, right? We want to hear more, not less. But I don't necessarily think that's how everyone in the room might feel.
Okay. Any questions on that, or would we good? Okay,
John, did you have something you wanted to say there?
I was just gonna say one final thought. Rules often don't become important until there is a conflict.
exactly.
Not having, trying to build a fire extinguishing system in a fire is bad timing.
That's a really good, that is
Yeah.
such a good analogy.
Good point.
that's a
Yeah,
good
totally.
point, yeah. So it's there if we need it.
Yeah, exactly. If you guys get sick of hearing my voice,
We'll
like
just go.
2-minute time limit, Bill.
We're gonna have a timer.
That one right
Like
there.
I'll be the
I
only
got
one with a
right
timer,
there.
everyone else can.
I think that, voting at meetings, I think this is gonna be a really great one to go over when we meet as the 2022 council. And just going over how that rolls, I think that it's a great refresher. I think that, for me, it's really important that you can make a motion seconded and then discussion. To me, that's the important part. And it's also really important that in the discussion point, there's no more referring to staff. That all has
That's
to be
all
done in
about us.
advance.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So some of those. But good news, there's still some reconsideration. 6.5, Mr. Thomas, anything there or anything that you feel you'd like to draw on that I've passed over?
If I remember correctly, most of this language came from the existing procedure bylaw.
Yeah, I thought that this was really interesting, so, yeah, I have no more notes in all of this, so, but others might, but I didn't. Did you have another point that you wanted to draw, that what you changed or something and why, or no? You had said not in that section, so I didn't know if there was another section you wanted to draw our attention to. No,
Not really.
okay. So with the indulgence of council, notice of motion, we've dealt with that annual municipal report, have to the schedules. I don't see anything else. Anybody?
Oh, good with that.
I like the eligible professional development activities. Notice. Here's 42 pages, people.
A lot.
Taylor.
Can I ask, Schedule A and B, is the intent that there's that they will be, and C, that they'll be populated before, and just that would be with our existing select and standing committees?
That's correct.
So this would have to come back if we add or subtract standing committees or board and commissions or whatever. Will it have to come back to be updated or whatever because of that?
I believe the bylaw has it that the schedules can be amended with a resolution
Okay,
for that specific purpose. For example, council can strike a working group on diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. And immediately that committee or working group exists. So the next resolution that can happen is I move to amend Schedule A to include boom,
okay.
and then it's done. And then we just provide a refreshed copy for the public as well and council.
So you wouldn't open up all 42 pages, is what you're saying?
No.
If you did, we
Just
would
checking.
stay. So just before we, read the recommendation that we rise from the committee of the whole, I just want to make clear. So with these changes, we could pass the procedure bylaw today,
We could.
the second and third
Yeah, it
readings.
could be second and third, yeah.
And that's because I read in your note that it was important for staff. So tell me what is important to you.
We can list those changes and do second, third reading. Adoption will still have to happen on November 1st for it to
Yeah.
take effect. Because there has to be a day between
Right,
third
that's
reading and
right, yeah.
adoption.
And go ahead, Councillor. Taylor. No. And then does it have to be? Like, do we have to do it, or can it be the first council after inauguration?
It doesn't have to be, no. What council can do is also send this back to staff, populate the schedules, make all the changes, have a final copy. And the November 1st meeting at 2 p.m., do second and third reading. And I am not sure if you would be able to do the adoption in the, no, we need a separate day after.
Councillor Taylor?
So I guess the risk is that then do you open it up to new edits and
On November
prolonging?
1st.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on November 1st. Well, not on November 1st, but on the date of adoption. When when the council elect comes in and looks at it and says, oh, hold on. And that, and like, could be further delay there.
I have a response from Mr. Penny.
Just to clarify, you can't make any more amendments after third reading.
Oh.
Well, unless you reconsider the third reading and do it again.
Do I have any other questions from council?
Not a question, but a comment.
Okay.
I'm in favor of keeping this as something that we do allow change from the new council. I think this was a really good session where we got it to a point where I'm feeling pretty confident, but I would like the two new councillors to sit down and say, for example, if 6:30 is a problem and 6:45 would solve the whole thing, I want them to have that opportunity to chime in with some ease rather than having to repeal, go back to third reading or a second reading. Like, to me, this isn't a hard thing, and they have to review this procedure by law anyway to learn their role. So it's maybe a good time for them to take a deep dive and be able to provide some feedback. That's my take on it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right that everyone involved for these next 4 years isn't having a say on it. It would be nice if they were both here for that. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
So, yeah, go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
So that would mean second and third reading happening like November 15th,
Yeah,
not November 1st.
Well, I would think the second and third could happen November 1st.
No, because that would be this council.
Still
Yeah.
Oh, is
sworn
it?
in.
Sorry. Oh, I
Because
guess it's the
inaugurations at the
nighttime.
nighttime.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, yeah. So it would be the 15th, yeah.
Mr. Thomas, do we have any
That-
downfalls if we put it off to that point? From
No,
your end of
not
things?
necessarily any downfalls. It just changes the way we have to prepare and orient the next term of council, that's all.
What would change in that? Because I think the only input at this point in time would be time.
It's really,
yeah,
Yeah, I guess
we'd
it's
have to be
just time
having
is the
2
only-
o'clock, November 15th meeting for sure.
So how would that sort of impact what would be your thinking on that?
So until there is a change, staff is only going to rely on the existing procedure bylaw.
Yeah.
Right now, we're one leg in the new, one leg in the old, or the current. So we're gonna, depending on council's decision, we're going to continue to rely on this. And if the next term of council wish to move forward, then they can certainly do that.
So this has been on the agenda. I'm hoping that the council members who will be joining the table are watching online. There is an opportunity to attend. I will share that, and I will share that is my perspective. I think that this has been good work that's been done. One of the reasons why we wanted to lean into this is so that we had a playbook moving forward. I think that there needs to have some clarity. I think it has that hybrid we've heard from the public, and to me that's really important of what we've done. And yet we've also managed how we work with staff, being sensitive to that. One meeting will, have staff over. If this timing doesn't work, if we find that there's inordinate financial implications or otherwise, it can be amended again. Am I correct?
Any bylaw
Yeah.
policy under the District of Clearwater could be changed by council.
It's a great thing.
Yeah.
For me personally, I'd like to move forward and just give them the playbook and work through it. That is my thought.
And
Councillor Frizzle.
I'm going to agree with you. I do like the idea that they are handed their next 4 years and how they're going to respond to things within council meetings and whatever. I think giving them this and giving them the opportunity to go through and make changes will be just overwhelming. They won't know what to even look at. I think we're giving them this and we can change it. We have that power. So I think we should move ahead too.
Okay, so with that, I would like to see a clean copy. That would make me feel better about having that clean copy. So having it on the 1st, I believe, and we can do 2nd and 3rd, and then it can be adopted. Is that right? Would that work for staff before we?
It wouldn't be adopted on the 1st.
No, it
because
wouldn't.
We need 24 hours between.
We'd have
Yeah.
to do the second and third today.
That being said, council does have the option of having another special council meeting to do the adoption before the 1st.
Input?
I'd pass on another special council meeting
Me
personally.
too.
Yeah.
So second and third reading today, it can be set through on the 1st then, is that what
Yes,
is
Yes.
taken?
the first afternoon.
There's no
Let's move.
changes after 3rd reading.
We didn't have an option.
No, you didn't.
No. we
Let's
didn't.
move forward with it.
Mm.
And I appreciated you were looking at that, say, okay, these are the rules, and I like this. I'm glad somebody told me what the rules
Mr. Taylor, I see the finger almost there. Go, say it.
No, I'm good. So 2nd and 3rd reading on the 1st.
Yeah.
And purely a adoption on the 15th.
And I want to make sure everybody here has spoken about that trajectory, if everybody's comfortable.
Mhm.
Staff, yeah.
Council has the option of recessing for 15 minutes, gives staff time to make the changes and bring back a revised copy for consideration.
right now. Obviously.
Listen, I spent my weekend going through 42 pages. So of all the nerds here, you guys, what would you like to do?
I think I would like to wait the 15 minutes.
I'm good to do it blind because I think you'll
I-
make the adjustments, we don't have to rush it because I'm more worried that there'll be like a typo then than if we just give you the time to write up what you heard here. I think we'll get the document correct by our adoption.
One option might be to read the proposed changes, summarize them now, and then if anyone feels that something was missed, and then we'll do 2nd and 3rd reading based on those changes highlighted, and then on the 1st we can adopt.
That makes sense.
I like that.
Makes sense for you?
So at that point, that there is a recommendation that council rise from committee of the whole. Yeah, because now we have to move into,
Okay.
You can, it doesn't make it.
no,
Okay.
it's the will of council for sure. How do you want to go? You want to go through and just, summarize? I think there's only 5 or 6. Like, there's not many. Like, it's taken 3 hours to get six changes.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
There are big changes.
They were important discussions. Is that, yeah, that's,
Okay.
so I
Okay.
need the recommendation to rise. Councilor Frizzle, second by Councilor Mackenzie. Discussion, all in favor? Rise. Now, do you need for the minutes to reflect that there's a motion to recess for 15 minutes?
Or
Or
that
are
he's
we,
gonna- they're just gonna read the.
they're just gonna read
the
the,
changes,
okay?
the amendments.
In addition, correct. See, I missed anything? In addition to the changes already incorporated pursuant to the report
Mhm.
today, the definition committee will be struck and instead replaced with two definitions, one for standing committee and one for select committee, which will be
Yeah.
pulled from the
Yeah.
previous bylaw. Current bylaw. Item 3.4.2.2 will now be changed to read, begin one meeting where there are two meetings in a month. One meeting will begin at 2 p.m. and one meeting will begin at 6:30 p.m.
You feel that we need to specify which meeting, so the first meeting of the month is an afternoon one and the third? Put it into context, if this is passed today, I believe that then it would dictate, that's what happens on the 15th, right? So, or we do a daytime to start with.
The thing to consider there is that in July, it's the second Tuesday and it's the third Tuesday of August. So both summer meetings would be nighttime meetings. In that case, would it not? Or is second
Maybe we
Tuesday the
could do it
first?
at the lake.
No.
Not in
No
January.
major buy it.
I know.
We're here.
I know.
Unless we vote on it.
There can be a special.
Yeah.
Okay,
I like the idea of first meeting in the afternoon,
And then
second meeting of the
second
month
meeting
in the evening.
okay, does that help?
Does.
Great.
So where there are two meetings in a month, the first meeting will be held at 6:30 p.m.
No,
No,
first one at 2 p.m.
Sorry,
and
at 2 p.m.
yeah.
Sorry. And the second meeting will be held at 6:30 p.m.
So that means our next one, the 15th, will be our first evening meeting.
it'll actually be the second because the inauguration will also be an
Yes,
evening
yes,
meeting.
yes.
So,
But that's a special meeting. so-
yeah. Mhm.
Yes.
so they'll
Okay.
all be day meetings.
Oh, so
But
the-
even though they'd be later in the month, they would end up
they'd be the
being,
first meeting.
It's the
Nice,
first
good
meeting.
catch.
Good catch.
Michael, nicely done. Oh,
Okay.
So you restate.
The first meeting of the month would begin at 2 p.m. The second meeting of the month would begin at 6.
Yes.
That's really all you have to say.
Yeah.
For that.
Because that covers,
Yeah.
yeah, so that covers those one.
Whether it's one or where there is.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Three, 3.4.2.3, we changed that it to read, I guess, be adjourned no later than 3 hours after the scheduled start of the meeting, unless council resolves to do the same. In all circumstances, a meeting of council shall not exceed 4.5 hours past the start of the scheduled meeting. So,
Mhm.
that will work
Because 6:30 to 11.
for the 11th. So
I see. Yep. Cool.
Okay.
I have a question later about adoption. Under 6.3.1.5, the addition of the word known prior to delegate conflict.
Yeah.
6.3.1.7 will be moved down the order to be between 6.3.1.22 and 6.3.1.23. any other changes you have on the record? Okay, and I would recommend that council discuss when the bylaw will be adopted, to take effect, actually. We learned that from a different scenario. When would council
So-
like this bylaw to take effect for?
This one,
The proposed one, yes.
oh, immediately after adoption, didn't it?
You have that option.
So go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I was just going to suggest that it would be, assuming adoption is completed on November 1st, that it would take effect November 15th.
The only thing that I might suggest is because we might have some consultations or things that are set up and they've already been pre-planned, so this would disrupt it. So it might be something to do for 2023 for January to take into effect. But I'd be interested in staff's thought on that. So for example, if you've got somebody who's planned for a 2 p.m. meeting and now we're changing it and they're like, well, I've got my kid's soccer game.
Checked with Michael, nothing comes to mind for delegation of any sort at this point.
Yes, it would be. I'm wondering if maybe we do it till 2023, just to, the mayor's not here, and I don't know what his thoughts are. That's just a thought, doesn't matter to me, that's just consideration.
Well, since we can't adopt till the 15th anyways by this, right? Because
No, we're
No, we're
adopting
adopting
today.
it. We're going to do second and third.
we're gonna second and third.
And adopt on the first.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
And staff doesn't foresee any problems. Okay, or so we can rock and roll.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I think we've captured it all. Now you need a motion.
Bylaw.
Do we need a motion to accept the changes of the bylaw or anything, or no?
But it doesn't hurt to do it.
I would prefer to do
Yeah, I
that.
think it's probably a good idea.
So, motion to accept the changes,
We're gonna move.
Councillor Taylor,
Yep, I can
okay,
motion that.
seconder? Okay, is there discussion on that? Because we have just verbally done these changes, everybody's content with that.
I like 'em.
Okay, no discussion, any discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed?
Just for-
Motion carries. It's great. And so now we have the recommendation that we read second and third. Is that right?
So I'll make that motion.
Okay, seconded by
I'll second it.
discussion. All those in favor?
You have to read it
I was
first.
just not here, so I thought you might not. Know. I think, am I gonna find that on the
Yeah.
last one, Michael? Oh.
Vote it third.
District of Clearwater Council Procedure Bylaw number 268, 2022, a bylaw to establish the general procedures to be followed by council and committees established by council in conducting their business. Whereas under section 124 of the community charter, council must by bylaw establish the general procedures to be followed by council and council committees in conducting their business. Now therefore, the council of the District of Clearwater, an open meeting assembled and act as follows.
You
Oh,
have to
there's a
read the
citation. Oh, this bylaw may be cited as the council procedure bylaw at number 268, 2022. All those in favor? Motion carries. Great work, team.
All right.
You guys, I think that was outstanding. That was, over 6 hours of digging into something that is the playbook. And I think that what's resulted is, in my opinion, is something that is reflective of the council, incorporates, some better procedures for staff, as well as still provides plenty of opportunity for the public. Meet that accountability piece. So I think that is great.
And it was 6 hours of thrilling conversation.
You only got 50% of the thrilling conversation.
And I'll also acknowledge the work of staff to
Yeah,
bring this
excellent
forward
comment.
and to, yeah, so thank you.
So correspondent, we have no correspondence, no notice of motion, no other business, no comments from the public, no special business. The only thing I will say is that this, oh no, you're still with us for one more meeting, aren't you? Okay, super. I'm just dying to say great things about you. Quorum.
And it's all on you.
Yeah. And it's also a reflect of the fact that, you know, we promised that we would change the time. And we did. Motion to adjourn. Great. Thank you very much, all. Really good meeting.
Thank you.
Change is a long conversation.